Hello, everyone. I am so excited to talk to Jodi Rosenbaum today. She's the founder and CEO of More Than Words, working with at-risk kids that are in the system. So you don't want to miss this episode. This is going to be great.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
This episode is made possible via the support of our sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd. Jodi, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. I'm delighted to join you today.
Well, I'm more delighted to have you. You're just doing, incredible work, and it's so exciting to see what you're doing with social enterprise. So tell us about More Than Words.
Sure. So we are a social enterprise. We believe in using business to deliver on our mission, and we are solving the problem of preparing some of our most vulnerable young adults for that really hard transition to adulthood. These are young people who are in the foster care system, court involved, homeless, or out of school, who face just a compounding number of risk factors and barriers to a happy, healthy, safe life. And we believe that giving them a job and high expectations and being part of a team in a real business setting is a really powerful vehicle for helping them do the really hard work of transforming their lives.
Yeah, it is really hard work, and the problems are just scary, right? I live in a downtown environment here in Salt Lake City, and Salt Lake City is as nice and friendly a town as there is, but the streets are just no place for 16-year-old, 18-year-old kids. Where are you operating, Jodi?
So we are in Massachusetts. We started 15 years ago in Waltham, which is outside of Boston. And we expanded into the heart of Boston about 8 years ago. And we have been growing by leaps and bounds, growing the number of young people we serve, growing our businesses, growing our impact in the field. And we just went through a very exciting and fun expansion that led to the opening just 2 months ago of a beautiful retail first floor space in our Boston location that has just an incredible retail operation, warehouse operation, event space, and social enterprise marketplace, in addition to the very robust online book selling business and pop-up shop business and wholesale business that we've been running for a lot of years. So there's a lot of dimensions to it, and it's pretty extraordinary, for sure.
Oh, that's great. So tell us a little bit more about the kids you serve and the risks they face.
Sure. So about 60+% of our young people have current or recent involvement in the foster care system, about 40% court involvement, and at any given time, close to a third are experiencing some form of homelessness, either intermittent or pervasive. And all of them are really in need of a transformational experience to realize that they matter in this world and that there is a future for them. I think it's not uncommon for a lot of our young people to have been bounced around 5, 10, 15 different placements, whether it be foster homes, group homes, residentials, lockup, hospitals, and very often see themselves through the diagnoses and labels and systems and pathologies that have been attached to them. And we often say to young people that we can't undo the 17 years or 18 years of trauma and drama they've experienced, but we can help them create really solid action plans and move their lives forward because they have so much potential and often are not given opportunities to be the best parts of themselves. They're often in programs and interventions that really focus on their problems, right? Rehabilitation, remediation, and way too often incarceration, but don't often get to have an opportunity to be seen as an asset, right? As an employee, as a team member, as a shift leader, as a partner, as a senior partner, as somebody who's good at customer service, as somebody who hits their key performance indicator, as somebody who helps, source over 4 million books going out on a fleet of trucks, going to your home or your business. They don't often get to see themselves as somebody who, knows how to do great merchandising and displays in a bookstore or host an event or public speaking or who can ship out, 800 books a day all over the world, right? Like those are tasks that reinforce for them that I matter. I can do things that are valued, that are important, that are seen by other people in this world. And there's something very powerful and therapeutic about work. We always say work works.
Yeah. So, how does a kid end up in your program?
Sure. So we do formally partner with state agencies like the Department of Children and Families, the Department of Youth Services, the Department of Mental Health, and their social workers will in fact send young people directly to us. We partner with group homes and shelters and schools and other nonprofits. But our number one referral source, what do you think it is, Devin?
I have no idea.
It's young people themselves. Young people who hear about More Than Words from other young people. And I think that that's a testament to the fact that this is seen by young people as a place that is valued and that is worthwhile. And I think is a true testament to the work that we're doing. So if young people come to us that way, we will always do the work of reaching out to any and all collaterals that we can. That's a big part of the work we do. Our youth development managers are in touch with if there's state agencies involved or foster homes or group homes or school counselors. We are in touch with all of those people to help do the hard work of getting everybody on the same page of how to help a young person move their own life forward.
Yeah. Well, it is such important work. Kids in these circumstances seem to be at risk for all kinds of problems. When you are homeless or at risk of homelessness, things that run in those circles are kids are at risk of being trafficked or at least of engaging in a variety of very risky behaviors, prostitution and drugs.
Yeah.
How do you engage with kids in that situation? It seems like they're so far removed from our traditional concept of someone who's ready to work.
Sure. I think a couple things. One, we partner. We don't do this work alone. And so we work with organizations that will help provide some of the housing, the health, the mental health, the academic, the substance abuse treatment that young people also need. But it's hard to sometimes do those things if you don't feel like you have a hook, right? Like a thing that's positive and productive. And I think that for us, More Than Words provides that piece, right? The work piece that lets young people then be motivated to tackle some of those other really hard and hairy barriers in their lives. And I think build the trust with More Than Words to start to do that work. When young people begin working and they're making money and they're feeling good in the business job, they have a whole second job at More Than Words that we describe as the U job, which is taking charge of themselves. And they work with full-time dedicated youth development managers who help them make plans to get back in school, stay in school, to navigate court issues, DCF issues, and to have hard, tough love conversations every week. We constantly hold a mirror up to help young people really make those incremental steps. And I think there's stages of change that young people work through. And then there's always kind of relapse and regression. And then we kind of pick it back up and go forward again. And I think that piece of the model is essential to being able to help them persist and do the really transformational work in the business as well. I think that match of the business job and the U job is some of the special sauce. And that we also then don't expect that thereafter they're going to just leave after 6 to 12 months and just be all right. And so we have dedicated staff whose whole job is to help young people get out of the building, right? So we have this career services department that is helping from day one to start to help young people think about, well, what are you going to do when you physically leave this building? And you're always going to still be a part of us. We're going to be in touch with you every month. We're going to bring you back for events and opportunities and hire you to train new youth. And we're going to do really fanatical data-driven assessments to see how you're doing to make sure that this is really working and support you with your next phase of post-secondary ed and jobs. And so it's a long journey. We don't expect this to be the kind of thing that you can do in a short period of time.
The idea of you raised of relapse and recovery and reset Sure. and starting over seems to me to be something that is really challenging for a traditional business. That it must even be really challenging for you, as core as it may be to your mission. How do you make that work for you and for a kid who's struggling, with whatever set of problems they're dealing with?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one of the beauty and the beast of social enterprise is that dance, that balance between mission and margin and keeping them in check. Because if you're too much like a business, your youth are dropping like flies. But if you're too much focused on young people and not running a business in a rigorous way, you lose the vehicle and it becomes kind of watered down. So a couple things. One, we bring new youth on every single month in new cohorts of trainees, and new youth are getting promoted up through the organization and moving out. And so you never have this all new young people at one time. You have the benefit of wisdom and experience, and then even sometimes some grads who come back and help do some of the training. And so you do have some wisdom in the young people who are working on the shifts. We also do overbook shifts with the understanding and expectation that there's going to be some young people who call out sick, who just don't show up, or who are really struggling and can't be there that particular day. But it is for sure a very challenging aspect of running a social enterprise. And I think that's the case across the board with our peers as well. But, there's no easy answer to that.
How do you describe that process? So a kid doesn't show up for a shift, and,
Sure.
and let's say there's evidence that kid's been using again. Maybe
Sure.
he'd been clean, now he's using again. How do you help that kid get back on the program? What do you do?
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, there will be a meeting and a conversation. And I think that that's pivotal, right? It's not, oh, you didn't show up and that's the end of it. But this idea that when you don't show up, we make a really big stinking deal about it, right? And we're calling you and we're calling your collaterals. And if you didn't call in, and we call it a no call, no show, there's an emergency meeting to really have a conversation about what's going on. And then sometimes there will often be what's called a suspension. You're not done with more than words. But if you've had enough missed shifts, potentially because you've relapsed and you're not taking good enough care of yourself to be able to show up on time and show up as you expected, you will have a suspension, and we'll make a plan for during that time what you need to do to kind of get yourself back on track. There are times, especially if it is health or mental health or substance abuse related, where someone's so far off the rails that it is unrealistic and unreasonable to expect that they're going to be able to show up. And we will sometimes then have a medical leave of absence, or say, this is just not the right time. It's not a failure on you. It's not a failure on us, but physically focusing on doing the work of More Than Words right now is just not the right fit. And so, let's take a break. And, when you're ready, we're going to stay in touch with you, right? We're not off the hook at More Than Words. We're going to stay in touch with you to figure out when you are ready to come back. And then we do expect that there is that process, sometimes because of suspension, sometimes because of a loss of job, because it's just not the right time.
How do you measure success? How do you know if you're making a difference?
Well, in a lot of ways. I think day in, day out, our young people are evaluating their own performance and each other's performance on every shift based on their level of professionalism, engagement, attendance, punctuality. And we also have a very rigorous set of competencies where they're giving feedback and measuring how well they are performing at a particular competency, be it problem solving or teamwork or communication, or if it's safety protocol out on the truck. So there's some very micro ways in which we do that day to day. At the end of a month, our youth do a monthly outcome assessment. We put all the data into our software program, ETO, and get a report that shows what percent their performance was, whether they met their personal goals that month, SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals. And so we do that month by month. They then have a performance review where they bring their data to their performance review every few months, and we look at their trend data to see how they're doing and whether they're ready for a promotion. So these are all these incremental ways as they move through More Than Words. But the rubber hits the road when they leave, right? And that's the true measure of our success, is how are you doing when you are physically not here with us every day? And for us, the number one thing that we look at is this idea of productivity, right? So you've been at More Than Words, you've been building these muscles, had this habit-forming experience of being somebody who gets up every day and is busy at work, busy being accountable with education. And so the number one thing we look at when you leave is, are you continuing to be a busy person? Somebody who sees that you matter and get up and do positive, productive things for your life every day. So we look at whether you're busy over 30 hours a week, engaged in some combination of work and or school. And we know that almost 80% of our young people are, in fact, doing that. But let me be clear, those young people are still struggling. And I think that's really important. It's not like, oh, we check a box and we're good to go. Beyond that, the two things that we really focus on is young people locking in that high school diploma or equivalent. And the reality is they may leave the social enterprise successfully, but still are working on locking in that high school diploma or equivalent. And so our staff are continuing to help them make sure they hit that goal. The second gate that we're trying to get them through, the hurdle we're trying to get them over, is being able to hold on to a different job for at least 6 months, right? Can you take everything you've learned here and apply it elsewhere? And so over 80% of our young people can hold on to their next job for at least 6 months, which is pretty significant given everything going on in their lives. So once they leave, if we can get them to lock in a high school diploma, and hold on to their next job for 6 months, we call that success. And at that point, that's when we can really talk about pathways and post-secondary ed and careers and movement that way. But you really have to think about getting them on the bottom rung of the ladder and moving them in that way. And again, that takes time.
What percentage of your kids that are of an age where they could have accomplished that have accomplished that?
Sure. So about 80% are productively engaged, that 30 or more hours per week when they leave here. 78% are employed. The ones who are not employed are mostly full-time school, right, like college. And of the ones who are working, we know that 80% are holding on to that same job for at least 6 months. And about 80%, it's kind of a little bit of a trend, that number, are obtaining that high school diploma or equivalent. And we will track formally that data for a minimum of 2 years when they leave the building, and now have begun more initiatives to get less frequent data in years 3, 4, and 5 out, which again is not pretty typical with a lot of nonprofits. Yeah. And the response rate goes down as you go out, but we've started some things like birthday incentives so young people know that even if their contact information changes and we can't reach them, they can contact us on their birthday. We'll send them a gift card, and it's a nice way for us to start to do a better job of holding on to their contact info.
Excellent. What are you most proud of having accomplished?
I mean, it's the human lives that I get to see do incredible things. You know, it's watching young people lead other young people and move their lives forward and see themselves do things that they didn't know that they could. I mean, it's very personal and in the moment to see those and bear witness to those moments where young people see themselves in a way they never thought that they would. I think as a CEO, I say that I'm really proud that we built something that's beyond just me. I think we were a small, scrappy, Jodi-driven thing for a long time, and I think that there are some really wonderful and strong leaders that lots of adults and youth take their cues from, and I think that that's a sign of strength and health. And then when I think even bigger on a more balcony level, I'm really proud that we are becoming a stronger voice in the field, chipping away at some of the barriers and systems that undermine our young people's success outside the walls of More Than Words, and that people are now really looking to hear our voice and understand our perspective about how not just what happens inside of More Than Words, but what happens outside of More Than Words really matters to our young people, and that we are now at that table trying to shift, whether it be child welfare policy around how and when young people's cases get closed, so that we're not pushing young people into homelessness, whether it be working more closely with the DA's office and defense attorneys so that when young people are court involved, that there's a more holistic understanding about what they need to actually solve the problem of making our community safer versus just trying to push them further into the criminal justice system. So I think that is a piece that I'm especially proud of right now is using this vehicle of More Than Words to actually influence more of what goes on outside of here. And if I could say one more, it would be that we're now starting to really share what we've learned with our training institute, and people are now coming and spending. We just in October had 3 days of a training institute with 16 people who paid to come and spend time with us to learn about what we're doing. And the idea that we're going to do it again in February and in May, that people can take our learning over the last 15 years and bring it back to their nonprofits, to their social enterprises, to their communities, either to improve what they're doing or to start something similar, I think is really exciting.
What is the most important lesson you've learned after doing this for 15 years?
Give young people space, right? Like we just so often assume that as adults we know better. And I believe strongly that with More Than Words, we've learned when you give high expectations, opportunity, and trusting relationships, and you put those things in place, and then you just kind of give young people the chance to do it for themselves, they do way more than we typically assume. And I think that that's a big part of why our nonprofit and social sector has not really moved the needle, is that we're always trying to do things for young people. And I think they're incredibly capable of moving their own lives forward with the right supports.
No, that's a great and powerful lesson. Jodi, why did you start this? Why did you get into it? Why did this matter to you? What's going on?
So I was pissed off, Devin, and I was working with young people in the child welfare and juvenile justice system, and I just was persistently puzzled at how we made things worse as systems of care, and just really baffled that adults would make things worse, right? Like, we'd remove young people from their home to protect them. We'd put them in an emergency shelter. They'd get in a fight at the shelter, and we'd lock them up. And I'm like, this is craziness. This is what we saw over and over and over again. And so I then went and taught, and I was pissed off again, like, overcrowded schools, 27 first graders, no paraprofessional, no recess, waiting in line for an hour just to get lunch for my first graders. And I thought, this is craziness. And it's persistently always because of kids, young kids of color and poor people who are constantly screwed, excuse my language, by the systems who are accountable for serving them. And that this would not be happening in wealthy white suburbs. And I think I got to a point where I was like, there's just got to be a better way of doing this. And my friends found a pile of books on the side of the road, and my wheels just started turning. We looked them up. We saw they were worth money online. And I just had this idea pop in my head that those really pissed off teenagers that I had worked with who were child welfare and juvenile justice involved could be selling these books online. And like an obsessed entrepreneur, I couldn't get the idea out of my head. And I was convinced that I needed to try it. And I found a group home with some really pissed off teenage boys that was willing to let me borrow them. And in an 150 square foot office, we started selling books on the internet. And from there, 15 years later, it's turned into a really extraordinary model for what it looks like to do this work.
Well, Jodi, what is your superpower?
My superpower? Someone asked me that recently. I think I am fairly unwavering and persistent, and in the name of doing the right thing and getting something done, I am fairly relentless in making sure to push it through as long and as hard as it might take.
No, fantastic. Well, Jodi, it has just been such a delight to visit with you. Before you go, would you take just a minute and tell everyone how they can learn more about More Than Words and how they can connect with you personally?
Sure. So our website is www.mtwyouth.org. We're on Twitter, MTWYouth, and I'm Jodi, MTWYouth. And we'd love to hear from you. If you're in the Boston area, you can visit us in Waltham or Boston. You can shop, you can donate books, you can volunteer. So we'd love to hear from folks. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, Jodi, thank you for being with us today. We wish you every success in helping the youth of your community become more successful people.
Thank you, Devin. Come visit us. We appreciate it very much.
All right.
Thank you. Have a great day. All right. Take care.
Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thank you for listening. Devin Thorpe's mission is to end extreme poverty, improve global health, and mitigate climate change before 2045 by finding and sharing the stories of those who are doing the most good. You can join with other listeners to accelerate Devin's mission by visiting helpdevin.org right now.